Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our LinkedIn Live. My name is Brandon Mills, Talent Development Specialist here at Gallup. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting today's session, and we have such a great topic today, especially with us going into the new year. And that topic is different types of goals to set in 2023. Our fantastic guest and great friend of mine today is Ryan Wolf. Ryan is our well-being lead here at Gallup and is super knowledgeable on setting goals. Ryan, we're so happy to have you join us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here, Brandon. Super good to have everyone else along. So thank you.
Absolutely. And as we're waiting for a few people to join in, we'd love for you guys to throw in your top five in the chat and where you're located as well. I'd love to see some of that information. And then as you're thinking about that, I'd love to throw this question out for you all. And that question is, what is a goal you set for 2023? Ryan, if you don't mind sharing your top five, what are some goals you'd like to set for 2023?
Yeah. Okay. So first, my top five are discipline, achiever, futuristic, activator, and harmony. So I think maybe I have a different kind of scope or kind of perspective on on setting goals. Mine are really really disciplined and really oriented, kind of action oriented. So um, yeah, I think there's a lot of things I want to get done. Um, I just got the email from our lead, Matt Mosser, told us that we send to Gallup all here, set at least between 3 to 10 goals and submit them. I haven't set them yet, so I might press pause on that question, Brandon, so we can revisit it later.
But I love that you said you have discipline number one. This was something we were talking about previously as well. But I have discipline number three, and so I love to be very detailed when it comes to my goals. I want to make sure that they're well thought out. I want to make sure I'm putting the right things in there.
Hmm.
So I'm right there with you too. I would say one of the biggest goals that I'd love to do, and this is just a personal goal for myself. I'd love to just be more in tune with a lot of my peers. I think that's a big goal for me. Hanging out, seeing some family, stuff like that. So that's one of my goals for 2023. Well,
Okay.
Ryan,
Well,
as we're having you here, I don't know how recently it's been since you've been on our LinkedIn Live. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
you bet. So Uh, been working. So my name's Ryan Wolf. I'm the well-being lead at Gallup. I work closely with our benefits team. I integrate research into all that we do to support well-being for employees, our internal employees, for clients, and for the public. So that's kind of the cliff notes of what I do.
Awesome, awesome, and you're fantastic at what you do, by the way, as well.
Thanks,
So
man.
it was one of the first ways I got to meet you. So glad to
Sweet.
have you on here full circle. Well, as we're on the topic of setting goals for 2023, Ryan, I'd love for you to just give us some insight on why is it so important to set goals?
Yeah, so I love that question. I think it's important when we're thinking about we're thinking about setting goals. It's kind of this promise that we kind of make to ourselves that life can be better, life and work can improve, and here's how I'm going to make them better. So I think goal setting kind of taps into our hopefulness and kind of that innate kind of characteristic that we have of hope that really kind of brings out the ingenuity and helps us just improve life and be better than we were yesterday or last month or last year. And with goal setting, I was just thinking about what Matt sent to us. We often say this phrase that you can't manage what you don't measure. um, so I think that's important when we're thinking about goals, and we really can't improve on something unless we're really properly managing it. So that's a nice way to
Absolutely.
think about goals, is by kind of measuring and managing the important things at work and life. And when so I got excited when I got his email. I think a lot of people can as well, because it kind of can trigger some new like behaviors or new focuses that you shared things. It kind of can trigger some new guidelines or rules that you might want to set for yourself if you're a rule setting kind of person, or new
Absolutely.
habits. Yeah, so and goals can be. superficial, or they can run deep as well. Um, with me, I've got disciplined achiever, 1 and 2. So sometimes the goals that I set can, maybe when others are looking at them, they might feel like, oh, these are just kind of superficial, get this stuff done,
Hmm.
do that. It can maybe look like a checklist, but
Yeah.
for others, it can run deeper and kind of really give us clues to like the purpose and meaning that we have and that we're looking for in our lives. So I think it's important to kind of know that there's different ways that we kind of think about goals and how we set them and what
Yeah.
we're trying to accomplish when we're doing so.
So Ryan, I love how you're, tying in the strengths here. And I don't want to rush to our, our next question, but when I love how you're talking about your discipline, right? Do you think it's like a little bit harder with you having discipline number one to set goals at all? Or because I have discipline pretty high too. And I'm like, and we were talking about it, I was like, it's kind of hard for me to set goals because I want to be so very detailed oriented on those goals. And I want to make sure I'm setting them
Yeah.
correctly. So
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times when I look at my goals, they can feel stale because
mhm,
circumstances have changed, and I kind of want to just reset or throw them away and create new ones. So I'm often doing that. That's healthy for me. It might not be healthy or natural for others, but yeah, I can definitely relate
yeah.
to your comment there. Yeah.
Awesome. We
Uh-huh.
actually have a question that popped in here in the chat from Millicent. She said, "What planner should I use for 2023?" Any suggestions on that at all, Ryan?
What planner?
Yeah.
Gosh, so if we just like Googled goal setting planners, we'd probably have infinite resources to choose from. I think, um, so. If you're looking for a framework, the SMART framework is really good. So specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, and time bound is a good one. And then I think, anything that just naturally can kind of get you in the zone where you're thinking about your successes and what you want to repeat over time. When we think about strengths, one of the best ways to identify what your strengths are is by studying your successes. So that can be, a good way to think about it as well.
Absolutely. I love that. So when, I love to tell this story too, but when I first started, when I was in high school and I was in college, I was terrible at setting goals, Ryan. I was absolutely terrible. I never knew what to do. My goals were, they weren't measurable or anything like that. But ever since actually I joined Gallup and I actually focus a lot more on my strengths, things have become a lot easier. And that's a little bit of what I want to talk to you about because I would love to for you to give some of your information and insight on what is a strengths-based goal and why should you keep your strengths in mind when you set goals? Why is it so important to do so?
Okay. Yeah. Well, goal setting, kind of like everything else in life, it can be a lot more efficient and effective and successful if we're really intentional about utilizing our themes and our strengths. So,
Hmm.
um, really, if you think about who you are, you can't help but be yourself. So, therefore, try to be a little bit more of who you are, and try to be more of your best self by utilizing your strengths and kind of creating goals with your strengths in mind. Really, strengths-based goals, they kind of just really help us. And I talked about this a little bit. Helped us, um, kind of identify your approach or your relationship to goals, or kind of your perspective on goals. And
Hmm.
I think we can't all kind of use the same framework or think about goals the same way, just like we all have unique themes. And you got a 1 in 33 million chance that someone else has the same top 5 as you. So there's a really good chance that your goals shouldn't be similar to anyone else's. They also,
Totally.
strengths-based goals really can just kind of be created and designed to help you get really the most out of your natural tendencies. So I think it just, yeah, it just helps having them in mind. We have a whole web page dedicated to setting strengths-based goals that is really good to reference and resource as you're thinking about this topic. So I think that's important. There's also, I'm thinking about a recent article that Bailey Nelson wrote, and she wrote this maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago about kind of strengths pairs or strengths packages.
Wow.
She kind of identified a bunch of different packages. There's things like social packages or detail oriented packages of strengths or perspective. So I think that's a really helpful article. I haven't seen us do a lot of work or authoring or writing on strengths packages or theme packages, which was super cool. But I think that is enlightening. Uh, so we talked about kind of my perspective on goal setting, and I think for some goal setting can be really natural. Let's say you have futuristic or strategic or focus or discipline. Those can be like really natural goal setting types of themes to have. But
Hmm.
let's say you have themes like adaptability or
Oh, yeah.
ideation, things
Yeah.
like harmony, that it might feel less natural to kind of create goals because the goals could feel rigid or restricted,
Hmm.
um, or constrain you to like acting in ways or operating in ways that aren't natural to you.
Hmm.
So that's where I think coaches or really good managers or best friends at work can be really helpful to bounce ideas off or set goals with. When we think about people who have really a lot of who are really strong in relationship building themes. So let's
Hmm.
say that, people who have empathy, developer, harmony, positivity, includer. For some, you might feel goal setting might feel in a way like kind of selfish, um,
Hmm.
because they're always kind of others oriented. They're others oriented people,
Yeah.
and so I think it's important just to that's just a different perspective that they might have, and maybe setting goals with others in mind, or setting goals through others, or setting goals as a team, can be helpful for
Yeah.
those. So.
And I think you touched on a great point there really quickly. I want to circle back to something you just said because you kind of touched base on the domains really quickly. So,
Mhm.
if you lead with certain types of domains, like it's relationship building or influencing or strategic thinking, should there be a different approach to setting your goals when looking at it from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So think about what just take a look at your profile and which themes you resonate most closely to, and really utilize those as in addition to something like a SMART framework
Yeah.
that has been used, tried and true. You know, you can Google SMART and there's probably 10 billion articles on it, but when you add your strengths to the fold, then it's smarter,
Mhm.
and it's just a way to level up kind of what maybe everyone else is thinking about and what you would have been thinking about prior.
Hmm. I love that. That's some great insight there. Now, Ryan, I want to circle back to setting goals in the sense of, how you can have better outcomes and really focus in on honing a lot of the goals that a lot of people really want to set for 2023. So there's different types of goals that you can set. And one of the things that I'd love for you to talk about really quickly here is, what are the differences between, an action-oriented goal and then outcome-oriented goals? So if you could just touch base on that really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, so actions and outcomes definitely, sometimes when we're setting a goal, it might be hard to for some of us based upon how we're wired to understand which one we're setting, or maybe they're integrated with both. They're oriented with both, actions and kind of results. So I think as you're setting the goals, if you want to kind of identify which one was which, with when you're thinking about an outcome goal, and if it's something that is kind of finite or can be complete and it can be finished, then that's
Mm,
probably you're probably looking at an outcome goal there. If you've set a goal that feels infinite and perhaps repetitive, something that you'll do each and every day or every week or month, and it could potentially never end, that might be an action goal that you have there. And both are great. And we don't need to. rewrite them if you feel like it's something that you really want to do or something that's suited to who you are. But
Mhm.
it's just good to be aware of whether or not it's a outcome or action or both, and then maybe setting other goals that could support each other. So when you think about, let's just say, for example, like one of my goals is to, I want to have, um, I guess let's go with one of your goals. You
Yeah.
mentioned that you want to relate more with others. You want to like improve your social well-being,
Yep. Absolutely.
and that's more of an outcome goal.
Yep.
Maybe your process or your action goal is, I'm going to intentionally reach out to one person each week who I haven't talked to
Mhm.
recently.
Mhm.
So that could be a way to kind of set an action goal for the outcome goal that you've already established.
You know, Ryan, I should be writing this down right now because I'm gonna need that.
Yeah.
But so would you say that, when looking at like outcome oriented goals and action oriented goals, do you think that, looking at an outcome oriented goal, do you think that's more of like the long term type of goal and then actions kind of correlated to short term, or is there any discrepancy there?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how the time bound that time bound is the T in smart. It
Hmm.
depends on the time frame that you have bound to the goal.
Hmm.
And I think some action goals could be things you do today, or they could also be things that you do in the long term. But yeah, I think in generally, you might be onto something there. Outcome goals are, some, especially when we're setting them in certain times of the year, December,
Yeah,
January. We're kind of thinking, okay, what do I want to accomplish during the next 12 months or so? And we're kind of thinking about outcome goals. And I think it's healthy to step back, to share with a coach, a manager, a best friend at work, hey, anything you see that I could set in terms of action goals, what could I do to support the or create, what actions could I create in order to help me achieve these outcomes?
absolutely. That's some great insight there. Thank you, Ryan. We
Hmm.
actually have another question come in from Angeline Soon.
Sweet.
She said, Ryan, can you give an example of how two people with different top talents might approach a similar goal? And for example, be on time for meetings.
Okay, I love it. So let's say beyond time for meetings can be challenging for us. Let's say you've got competition for one, and then I think the question is, can you use different domains to achieve the same goal? Is that the question? Or an example, two people with different talents. Okay, so let's say somebody's really high in competition, and then their partner is really high in relator. Okay, they both want to achieve the same goal, which is to get to meetings on time. Well, the person with competition, pretty natural for them to say, all right, I want to be on time, but I don't just want to be on time. I want to be the first one there. I want to get this thing started because I've got that influencing part of my of
Yeah,
who I am. So that's how I'm going to get there. I'm going to be the first one to arrive. The
absolutely.
what did I say the theme was for the other one? Relator. I believe I did. So that person wants to get to meetings on time because there's some really good conversation and that can be had prior to a meeting getting formally started, that can build a relationship that can be circled back on after the meeting and really kind of personalize all of what might have felt like maybe a dry meeting where it was just like, okay, here's what we need to do. Adding some personality to it with the relator showing up early can help with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angeline, for that question here. If you guys do have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat as well. We'd love to answer them. Ryan, I want to go back to the different types of goals that there may be, and this really touches home with me because this is really what I struggled with previously was looking at the different types of goals, rather they're from quarterly goals or yearly goals. Do you want to just talk about like the differences in goals that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about the time frame that we're using, I think it can be helpful. If if we're the type of person who is thinking really like maybe we have high futuristic or
Hmm.
high influencing themes as well that are thinking big, hairy, audacious goals. BHAG is
Yep.
another framework like SMART. A lot of times those can be distant in the future, maybe hard to grasp, and I think it can be helpful to come back around and say, okay, what do we need to accomplish today or next week or this month in order to track and hit those milestones? You can think of it almost as like a Google Maps. Let's say you're in New York City right now. You're sitting there and you have a big goal to achieve a road trip to San Francisco. That's big and that's awesome and that's going to be a lot of fun. But there's going to be some details and some stops along the way you're going to need to plan around and navigate. So I think that's just kind of a way to illustrate how we can kind of like come to grips and really be a little bit more practical about the big, awesome, great things that we do want to accomplish.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for answering that. And that one, actually, I'm keeping that one up here because I need that. Natalie asked a question here. She said, "What is a healthy number of goals to have? Two, four, 9, 20, maybe? What do
Okay,
you have for us, Ryan?"
great question. So I haven't checked the literature. I'm curious. I'm thinking about maybe doing so, and seeing what's effective based on what's been researched or studied. I think that we're also just like you're the researcher in your own life. So start experimenting with what really works well for you. Set think about your successes and the goals that you've set leading up to those. That's probably a pretty good indicator to how many goals you should be setting. Gallup asks all of our associates to set between 3 and 10 goals. I don't think that came from a research project. Perhaps it did, but that's what we're asked and tasked to do here at Gallup. But I think whatever feels natural and motivating, invigorating, exciting for you is probably the right number that you'll land on.
Awesome. I hope that answers your question there, Natalie. And Ryan, back to you. I'd love to just kind of to close this out here. Is there any other goal setting advice based from a standpoint of elements of well-being or a strength based approach that you love to just give out to a lot of the people who may be watching or people who may be listening to this a little bit later, that might be
Mhm.
useful when it comes to setting goals for 2023?
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. I just probably could go on and on about this, but I think it's important to really to evaluate and reset goals kind of throughout the year. So if you're thinking about um, year-long goals that you're setting right now, it's okay to go back and edit and evaluate and reset based on circumstances that will certainly change for better or worse or indifferent. So just be prepared to be okay with evaluating and resetting those and updating those. So it can be a living document, your goals. They don't have to be printed out. They can be, digital. It can maybe help you to have them printed out and to have them fixed and stationary. But it might also be helpful to have them be editable as the circumstances at work in your life are changing. Um, So I think you asked about well-being, and we have a framework for well-being that includes multiple elements. And I think it's important to understand. So the elements are, we've talked about career a whole bunch. So that's
Yeah.
element number one. There's also social, financial, physical, and community, the other four elements. Perhaps there's other elements of your life that you feel are really important to you as well. That's part of your framework of well-being. The five elements that we have are internationally common and statistically significant when we conducted the world poll in the early 2000s. But it's important to get back to the point that I want to make is let's say we've created lots of career goals that are exciting for us. They're things we want to share, we want to accomplish with others, for ourselves, for the sake of improving our lives. And So we think about career goals, and you know, all the elements of our life and well-being are really interdependent. They're interrelated. And you can't really silo them out. So think about how maybe a physical goal could help you achieve one of your career goals. So if we think about,
Mhm.
yeah, we think about physical well-being at its essence and pure um, uh, definition is to have energy and to have the health that you want to do, kind of have the energy and vigor to do the things that you want to do every day. So what
Yep.
are some physical goals that and maybe these could be action oriented or um, to help you accomplish what you want to do with your career with your career goals. So could be that maybe one goal is I'm going to start each day by stepping outside, walking around the block, getting my heart rate going, get some
Mhm.
endorphins going. That's the way I'm going to kind of, get my body moving and to clear my head so I can have a great start to the day and tackle my goals with full energy. So that's just an example of kind of how kind of our those elements of well-being can intersect each other and build upon each other,
Yep.
and there's really infinite ways that we can find those intersections. So I just encourage you and to encourage others as well to find those connections to make deeper commitments and more energizing activities to and goals to complete.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. And it looks like we have just one more question here to close this out. And that is, should you talk about goals with other people or should you keep them to yourself if you have no need for accountability buddies? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, okay, that's great. So okay. I like this question a lot because I feel that we definitely need to share goals with others. So we
Hmm.
should we should that can be very helpful for a lot of different reasons.
Yep.
I think it's also okay to have some personal goals that maybe they're like so overly ambitious that you might feel embarrassed to
Hmm.
share with other people. But I challenge that train of thought that maybe it's embarrassing to share with somebody else because it's overly ambitious or zealous. But I think that's just a way to get others, those people who are most important in your life, to help you, kind of to help support you in achieving what you really want out of life. So I think it's okay to maybe set the big ones. Maybe keep them to yourself if you feel like it's better that way. But challenge yourself, and maybe not every goal needs to be shared with your manager, and not every goal. Maybe your spouse isn't interested in every single goal that you have about work,
Hmm.
but certainly. Uh, Utilize your social ties and your partnerships wisely, and that's really the essence of social well-being, is to gain support for things that are important in our life.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Ryan, so much for your time. I hope you guys can use a lot of what we shared today to set some of your goals for 2023, with 2023 being right around the corner. For all of our listeners out there, if you're interested in more of this content, check out our Clifton Strengths podcast on any of the available apps. Feel free to check out our YouTube channel as well. And if you aren't following the Clifton Strengths LinkedIn page, feel free to do so as well. We have tons of great information on here. And with that, like I said, Ryan, thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time.